Welcome, everybody, to another Brookside's Story. I'm Quinn Schultz, a member at Brookside.
And I'm Pastor Paul DeVries, pastor here at Brookside.
Pastor Paul, it's great to be with you here again on another podcast. And you came to me the other day and you said you want to do a podcast which is going to explain why you're doing a series of sermons and then what you want to do them on.
Right.
And you kind of shocked me a little bit. So let's have you go ahead and...
I could sort of tell.
Let's go ahead and have you shock everybody.
Well, I'm going to do a series of sermons beginning in the middle of April, last 2 weeks of April, on marriage and sexuality.
Marriage and sexuality.
What could go wrong?
What could go wrong? Well, I remember as a teacher at Calvin University, there were three things I was very careful about whenever I was teaching. I could address them in class, but I had to be careful. One was money, another one was politics, and the third was sexuality. And so I'm a little bit gun-shy about talking with you even before your 6 or more sermons, which will undoubtedly get you into trouble.
Yeah. Well, there's no doubt about that, and I understand your reluctance. So, but here's what I'm thinking. There has to be a way to communicate important biblical truth that the church believes is important for some of the core issues of life, sexuality, marriage. There are a couple of the only things that are mentioned about human relations and connections before the fall, and yet they rip us apart. There has to be something we can do.
Okay, so your idea is to do a series helping us to interpret fairly, and obviously with at least 6 of them somewhat deeply, this topic from the standpoint of Scripture, rather than your own personal opinion necessarily.
Right. Now, of course, my opinion, will come across, and here's the problem I think we get into. Because we're at odds on this issue, as soon as I start talking, your defenses are raised if you think I'm not on the same side or don't believe the right thing. And likewise, mine might be raised. And so when I talk to you, I'm trying to convert you or have a debate with you. And this isn't communication at its best, right?
Positions are already there, even within, let's say, Brookside Christian Reformed Church, or probably any Christian Reformed Church. Regardless of the official denominational positions, there are going to be differences among people.
And of course, this is beyond just the Christian Reformed Church. I think most Christian churches, if not all, are struggling with it. Certainly in the Western world.
Always been that way.
Certainly in the Western world.
Go back in the history of the church on these matters, it's always been that way. So we are living at a time which is similar to what the church has always lived in with respect to some differences.
And so part of the issue then is someone like me. I like to build consensus. I like to bring people together, or compromise, you could use if you want a more negative word. People like me tend to say, come on, we can get along, and this issue doesn't need to divide us. We can be together even if we disagree. But that so-called third way, or harmonious way, or polarity, we're going to balance. On this issue, it doesn't work. In my experience, it just doesn't work.
Okay.
And the reason it doesn't work is, for me to have that position, I need to say, I think you're probably you can make just as good a biblical case as me, and the other night, you can make just as good, and then but most of us simply don't believe that.
All right, let me see if I can disagree with you kindly on this, charitably.
See, I'm already defensive.
Yep,
I'm already thinking of my reply. I don't even know what you're going to say.
So I want you to tell me why marriage and sexuality should be different from, let's say, something like baptism. So I used to say to my students with respect to baptism that there are different views on baptism. Do you baptize adults? Do you baptize children? Do you do both? Do you do families together like we seem to have in the early in the church and the like? And I would tell the students what my view is, which is infant baptism, except somebody who's converted later in life, okay? But then I would say there are other views, and I understand where those come from, both historically and within Scripture, and I can accept those even though I don't agree with them. So why should human sexuality and marriage be different from that?
I don't think human sexuality and marriage is different than that. I think it's very similar. Here's the difference. You know, there was a time when we fought wars about issues like baptism. We don't fight wars about baptism anymore. We don't fight wars about those sort of doctrinal issues. But Lutherans are Lutherans, Baptists are Baptists, Christian Reform are Christian Reform. And we have confessional differences, which we've agreed are significant enough that I'm not Lutheran, right? I'm not Roman Catholic. And yet I can say my brothers and sisters disagree, but to be part of a body, you know, and worse yet, on marriage and human sexuality, precisely because we're afraid of the issue, or we're trying to convert the other side on our issue, rarely do we just communicate our best case for why we believe this is what Scripture says.
And that's what you want to do.
And that's what I want to do. I don't want to argue or debate. I don't want to dismiss my brothers and sisters who disagree on this issue, but I want to say, here is why the Christian Reformed Church has taken this position, which probably best can be described as the historic Christian, the traditional. See, even the words we use can get us in trouble.
Yeah.
And this is why I, as pastor, agree with this particular position, to make the best case I can, being as open and recognizing that there are Christians who disagree.
All right.
Definitely even Brooksiders who disagree, but this is why this is the official church's position and why I think it matters.
Okay, so let's make this part one. We're doing a few parts here as preview, a little bit of a preview to what's going to happen in the sermons, but also explaining why you're addressing this topic at such a time of conflict and doing it with so many sermons. And so watch for part two of our discussion opening up. I'm proud of you. I'll just say that at the beginning here, Paul, to do what you're going to do. The easiest thing is just not to address the topic as a pastor. Stay away from it. So we'll be back. You've been watching Brookside's Story, and we meet at Brookside Christian Reformed Church on Sundays at 10 a.m. I'm going to get it right this time. At the corner of Kalamazoo and 36th.
Excellent.
Not 32nd, which I said again last time, which I later went and edited out of the video after I've done it twice, even though I know where 32nd is. I tell you, the joys of getting older or being a professor for too long, I don't know what it is. But at any rate, please watch the second part of this. We're going to go a little bit more into depth as to why Paul is doing this and how he's going to approach it. And we'll look forward to hearing any kind of responses you have. So we'll be back at part two.
Thanks a lot.
Thank you.